of course, somebody comes in the second I start webcasting. Welcome to Sagas Sass Season 3. I'm Tara, along with fellow hosts Nick, Jonathan, and Nami. This episode will cover parts 1 through 3 of the Gilded Wolves, the first installment in Roshani Chokshi's Gilded Wolves trilogy.
If you're watching us live, join us in the chat, or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Sagas Sass to continue the conversation.
And just a reminder, the views expressed in this show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole. And also, Nami should have definitely covered how to pronounce the author's name before we started.
Oh, yeah, I was just kind of winging it.
It's okay. It's Roshani Chokshi.
Okay.
Roshani Chokshi. Thank you.
That was really good.
Well, now I feel like okay, we're gonna do this over right now for the podcast.
I'm confused some. I'm so surprised.
No, it's fine. I'll remember that for next time.
Well, welcome back to your regularly scheduled Sagas and Sass episodes. While we have left the books of Babel and their physical tower behind, the lure of Babel truly is strong this season as we dive into Roshani Chokshi's Gilded Wolves trilogy. The Gilded Wolves throws us right into its world, that being Paris in 1889, but a very different Paris than the one we know in real life, IRL, because in this world there's a magic system called forging, a system that apparently derives its power from some sort of fragments that came from the destroyed Tower of Babel. Forging is described as a power of creation rivaled only by the work of God, and maybe it's just because we meet a bunch of prodigies right off the bat, but it really does seem like those with a forging affinity can create almost anything. But hey, that's the magic system stuff that we'll hopefully, probably learn more about later. For now, it's time to meet our main cast of characters. Well, the book's prologue introduces us to the head of House Kor, one of the houses of the Order of Babel, the order that is supposedly charged with keeping the aforementioned fragments safe, and we witness her VIR, very important ring, getting stolen. She's not part of our trusty new crows. I mean crew. Sorry, not sorry. We had to throw in a Grishaverse reference there. First up is Severin and Enrique, who are in the midst of acquiring, aka stealing, let's be real, a compass that may or may not contain a treasure map. We learn quite a few things about these two. Severin is the last member of House Vanth, though he was cheated of his position as head of that house, which was then declared extinct. Severin wants nothing more, or rather almost nothing more, than to take back his birthright. While Enrique doesn't have forging abilities, he is a genius in his own right and an extremely knowledgeable historian. Unfortunately, as someone who is half Filipino and half Spanish and therefore doesn't really fit into either of those worlds, his personal history has been somewhat fraught.
Nami, you're muted.
Hold up. I muted myself to squash a bug, and then I forgot I muted myself. Nice. Bug has been squashed, by the way, in case anybody was
Thank goodness.
As our new heroes, or perhaps anti-heroes, attempt to steal the compass, they run into a couple snags, including Severin nearly losing his arm to a forged bear guard thing. But in the end, they acquire said compass, which does in fact contain, well, if not a map, something clearly important. But before we can learn what it is, we have several more people to meet. Layla is a dancer, baker, and candlestick All right, that's a dumb joke. I'll stop now. But anyway, she's basically Mumford Extreme and also happens to be really good at just getting things done, including at this point, making sure that a house courier, wow, I hated that word combination, receives an invitation to a party so that the group can later utilize him as part of their plan. Because you gotta love when unconnected details just come back and it's like, whoop, always in the plan. Zofia, meanwhile, is the engineer of the group, a cookie-loving savant who struggles with human interaction, but whose forging skills might be unmatched. She was expelled from insert French school here, because no.
École des Beaux-Arts.
Excuse you?
It is école des beaux-arts. Like it's like beaux art is how you would pronounce it normally, but because it's run together with the X. Yeah. Anyway.
This is why I never bothered to learn French. My mouth does not make those noises. I would rather Mandarin before French. She was
Fair.
expelled from what Tara said. Insert Tara voice here. But Severin took her in, and while she doesn't like having to lie to her sister Hila, who is relegated to nanny for some of their relatives back home, she is working hard to gain autonomy for herself and her sibling. Finally, we may never get a Tristan POV chapter, but he's an important member as well, with powerful forging abilities of his own and a long history with Severin as they grew up together in a series of real heckin' terrible foster homes. Okay, but now that we know our main cast of characters, back to the story. Severin and Enrique and Lila and Sophia and Tristan work together to puzzle out the compass, though it is through Enrique and Sophia's teamwork that its true secret is finally revealed. It shows that an object called the Eye of Horus can be used to suss out the location of a Babel fragment. Oh.
Unfortunately, the owner of the compass, Hypnos, a childhood friend of sorts of Severin, who is now the head of House Nyx, tricks Severin into admitting that he stole it and into thinking that, tricks Severin into admitting that he stole it and into thinking that Layla, Zofia, and Tristan have been captured. P.S. They haven't. But in that moment, Severin believes he has no choice other than to enter into a binding agreement with Hypnos to help him obtain the Eye of Horus. Though in exchange, Hypnos promises to re-administer the inheritance test and thus reinstate Severin as head of House Van. And thus begins what seems to be the true heist of this book, which involves a party at the Palais des Rêves, Opera House, an interrogation of House Corps' courier, the theft of yet another artifact from the Exposition Universelle, a sort of Order of Babel hosted World's Fair, for lack of a better description, and finally, everything coming together, hopefully, at House Corps' Spring Festival celebration, where the goal is to acquire the Eye of Horus without, tipping anybody off. Granted, even leading up to the festival, things don't quite go as planned, considering Enrique and Sofia are attacked by some bumblebee pin wearing dude with a weaponized hat when they are gathering the aforementioned artifact from the exposition. Not to mention Tristan constantly bugging Severin about how much he just doesn't like this whole plan. But with the promise Hypnos extracted, Severin doesn't really have much of a choice here, so off to the festival they all go. Granted, things get pretty dicey at the party. It's a lot of will they, won't they? And no, I'm not talking about Severin plus Layla here. We'll get into that later. Basically, not a single part of their plan goes as, planned, though eventually they do in fact acquire the Eye of Horus. But this acquisition comes at the expense of one of their group, as a man named Rouge Bear, someone who Severin, Zofia, and Hypnos all meet at some point someone who Severin, Zofia, and Hypnos all met at some point that night, has captured Tristan. Rouge Bear takes the Eye of Horus and tells them they have 3 days to bring him Hypnos' Babel Ring. And that, dear listeners, is where we leave these characters as we dive into our first Gilded Wolves discussion. Wow, so much French.
Almost like it's set in Paris.
I did better at pronouncing the French shit than I did speaking English words just then. Let's be
honestly, hey, at least you got one language down, and I think that's all that really matters.
Oh, yeah, it should be anyway. Okay, so we're covering about 2/3 of this book, which I hate splitting it up so unevenly, but we did leave, Part 3 does leave us on quite a cliffhanger, which is also kind of fun. I wanted to just start by calling out the similarities to the Crows and the Six of Crows duology. And part of my reasoning for this is because in searching for summaries and everything of this book and just kind of, I like searching for summaries and discussion points and seeing what other people have said so that I don't make a total ass of myself when trying to come up with things for us to really hit on in our discussions. But anyway, there was a lot of comparisons to Six of Crows, which I get because, again, similarities are they are a group of misfits or outcasts trying to steal important things from presumably bad or at least not good people in order to better their own lives. And also Severin runs a hotel, just like Jesus name I'm blanking on. Kaz, thank you.
Kaz Brecker.
I was gonna say Baz, and I was like, no. We're not talking about Baz Luhrmann here. That's not right.
Yeah, Baz Luhrmann, the famous crow.
Yeah.
I think for me the funniest thing is that, like, you know, before Six of Crows, like the heist genre of YA books was not really there. So it makes sense after Six of Crows for anything else that's also YA and a heist to get compared to Six of Crows. And I guess the other main comparison I would say that I picked up on was that, like, the main broody white boy, or in Severin's case, seemingly white boy, but not white enough boy, is, and the second in command brown girl are like love interests. And so that was the other, like, that's pretty funny to me. But like, I think it was so funny to like see people comparing it, because it's also like very much like a marketing thing that, like,
yeah,
you know, people like put Six of Crows on there because Six of Crows did so well, when in actuality it's like very like surface level similarities, and then once you get into the actual story, like the type of adventure and things that are happening are like completely different.
Yeah. I mean, and also motivations as well. You know, Kaz is basically out for revenge. I don't want to talk too much about this. I really just wanted to touch on it, but you know, yeah, there's definitely different motivations, totally different magic system.
And not to forget, like, heist vibes generally. Six of Crows is what? Six of Crows is Ocean's 11, and this is National Treasure. Like, subgenres, guys. Like, get it right.
Yeah, geez.
I love it.
Go watch National Treasure again if you don't know what we're or for the first time if you don't know what we're talking about, or whatever. Ghost of the Declaration of Independence. It's family history, y'all. Okay, so on that note, how do we feel about the characters so far? I wrote just, you know, obviously brief descriptions in the summary, but I also started writing brief descriptions in our discussion points and didn't finish because I kept going back and forth. So my brief descriptions are more brief for some than they are for others. Severin, emo boy with an I. Layla, mom friend. And I'm going to leave out the other thing I said about her. Enrique, just trying real hard and also kind of flawless. Sophia, on the spectrum, do we think she's stereotyped? Tristan, introverted animal lover. Hypnos, aka I want to be part of your crew so bad. Please let me in.
I love that description of
Hypnos. Sort of the easiest one. So, or rather, in technically the hardest one, because I think that's Sophia, in that I thought she was well written, but I don't think any of us here are on the spectrum, so I don't really think that any of us can really say if she is good rep or not.
Right. And the only reason I made note of that was because I thought she was well written too, but then, you know, I read a review where it meant, like, it said she was stereotyped, and there was no build on what they said. It just said that she was stereotyped, so there was no personal reasoning or experience. It just was like that statement. So I was like, oh shoot. I mean, I don't want to assume she's not stereotyped now. So
yeah, for my thing, I'm like, you look at the whole spectrum and I put like my toe in the water. That's where I'm at. Like my toe is slightly in the water, but I still can't really comment on this. But I would also like to see like the thoughts about other autistic individuals and see like what they think, because like as far as my little experience, it seems like it could be genuine, but also like everybody's experiences are different, and I don't know, I'd be interested to find out. I do think she's charming and lovely, and whenever she doesn't get a joke, I just want to squish her.
I think like her own introspection is what I definitely see some of that awkwardness in, you know, friends I've had who I know are on the spectrum, but like I can't speak to their introspection, and I don't have any of my own, in that respect. So it's I would definitely be interested in finding somebody who has read these books or will read these books and is willing to talk about it, because it is something I'd like to, you know, I don't know. I feel like the author did a really good job with the other characters, but also there's definite obvious experience of like with Enrique of the being part of both worlds, but maybe not, because she is half. I know. I can't remember what it is. I looked it up and then I forgot to write it down. But she's like, one parent is one thing and the other parent is the other thing, and so I feel like she probably had a lot more personal experience with that. But I don't. Beyond that, there's not much out there about the author to know, you know, what her experience with everything else was. But I do like Zofia a lot, so like,
Okay.
she might be my fave.
She's half Filipino and half Indian.
Okay, I was gonna say half Indian, half Filipino, but then I was like, oh no, I don't want to say it wrong. And I don't want to be wrong about this.
I love Zofia. She's just like even beyond like the like spectrum stuff, she's just like such a quintessential like nerd who doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
That I just enjoyed her a lot. As someone who was formerly a nerd who didn't get it, but is now a nerd who does get it, but still accidentally like steps directly into dirty jokes. Like I understand. And
my problem always was that I was like the nerd who did get it, but usually the jokes came at my expense for most of my life.
Yeah. My expense now, but that's because I do things like I'll see somebody eating chicken on a stick and I'll be like, oh wow, that's a great meat stick, and I won't think about it, and people will just be like, Mommy, come on. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's a great meat stick. Lovely meat. Oh. This is a conversation I had with a coworker last week.
So I don't know, Nick, what are your thoughts on Zofia?
I think similar to what Nami was saying, like I really enjoyed her as a character. I don't feel like I can comment on spectrum aspects, but I enjoy her. I want to protect her, and she is a delight.
And she's also Jewish, and I believe Polish. Maybe
I think so.
I'm pretty sure she's Polish. I know that when they get handed their roles for the festival, she has to be Russian, and she's pissed about it.
Yeah, she is Polish, because I remember that Severin has a comment about being like, and then I met this little Polish girl, and it was like, what the fuck? She likes setting things on fire.
I mean, I don't know if it like I wouldn't call her a pyro either, though. I think that's just like I think that's just part of her powers, right? It's something that she for 1 second lost control of, and now she feels like she has to be in control of it always, because that one moment of losing control of it when she was upset because her fellow students bullied the shit out of her in like this awful way. I wasn't
talking about that. I was just talking about the fact that she makes bombs.
Oh, yeah. Amongst many other things. But yes, it's such a diverse group. I think the only one we don't really know anything about other than basic looks description is Tristan. Well, and obviously his like affinity for animals is Tristan, animals and plants, I guess. But
hey, Tristan's the token white boy.
Yeah, I mean, really, which is fun because usually it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Severin is, I guess I don't like this term, but you could use the term passing because he is half
Algerian.
Yeah, I know. But I think that I couldn't remember if that was something that's revealed in this part of the book.
It is. Don't worry. I reread it all today.
And I don't know that it's really like a spoiler, because we know he's definitely half something that's not like some race that's not white, but yeah, it's not really a spoiler, but yeah. So, and then obviously Enrique and Layla is
Indian.
Okay, I it's like Indian, but then I had like these things in my mind of this person is this person is this person is this, and then I read some reviews and stuff, and I'm like, wait a minute, am I wrong? Layla especially, there was something about Layla's dancing that was like saying she oh my god, what is the term I'm looking for? I'm so tired, you guys. I'm sorry. The term I'm looking for when you take somebody like when somebody isn't Native American and dresses up as a native, cultural appropriation.
Dude, she's a Bharatanatyam dancer from India. I'm gonna fucking fight someone.
Yeah, so that was confusing to me because I was like, wait, how could you appropriate your own culture? But maybe I'm wrong.
By a goddamn Indian woman. Sit your asses down.
When I think they knew that she wasn't, like, the person that wrote this knew that she wasn't white, right? They knew that she was of like.
Please link me to this review so I can
I'll find it.
Rage quit at what the fuck?
And maybe I misconstrued what they were saying, but I don't think I did. Anyway,
the only thing I can think of, let me see. I have to Google something.
But on that, while you're Googling away, so let's go back to we were talking about Severin, and he's half Algerian but doesn't look it, but he
nope, even that one doesn't work. Okay, the most I could think of is that she mentions being like from Pondicherry, which is an area of India, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is South Indian, but if this is North Indian, it could kind of make sense because Bharatanatyam is very South Indian. But no, it's from fucking Tamil Nadu. That's South Indian. I don't understand.
Yeah, I'll have to link you to it. But anyway, so how do we feel? No, it's okay. It's okay. I know I'm asking you these questions because like I knew of anybody you would at least have
the fucking caucasity.
Yeah.
The caucasity.
I'm literally Indian. And I did Bharatanatyam. Like,
but see, like what I just said made you like rethink something for a second, right? Because like when I was
well, hey, if you didn't know that, like if you didn't know that, you'd be like, what the fuck? Oh, this must be true. But like as somebody who is Indian, who is classically trained in Bharatanatyam, whose mother grew up doing Bharatanatyam in India, whose whole like that whole side of my family dances, like not quite, bud.
Yeah, well, and again, like I could have misread or misconstrued what they were saying because obviously, like before I read that stuff online, I was thinking, or not thinking, it was pretty freaking obvious that her not being happy with having to do this dance was because it was like putting on like a costume party, like thing just for people's entertainment, and it was removing the true meaning and beauty and everything behind this dance, right? Yeah. So I think that the author did a really great job of showing that was what it was, but then I read this and I was like, oh shit, did I get this wrong? Like I don't know enough about Indian culture, particularly especially Indian dance culture.
No, that was like on point, like to the point where I have so I am classically trained in Bharatanatyam. I have learned and danced a Jati Swaram. I like all of that like spoke to me on a level that I never expected to be seen so clearly in a book. And like her whole comments about like how like her hair isn't right, how this costume isn't right, how it was all just like a costume for the West to view like the exoticness of Indian culture, like all of that. I was like, yep, there it is. That's why I don't like showing people that I know this dance, because then they're just like, oh, it's like weird Asian shit, or oh, why don't you make it sexy? Like it's not supposed to be sexy. Like it's very like rooted in like prayer and like spirituality and like stuff like that. And like I'm not a super religious person, but I still like that aspect of dance, like still just like I'm trying to make like some sort of like clicking coming together hand motion, but it's just making grab claw hands at myself. And yeah, no, I've never felt more seen in a like passage ever. And also just the moment where she's like, Jati Swaram, but play it faster. I was like, bitch, you did not. Cause those musicians write it real fucking fast. And like she describes the opening pose that she goes into, and I'm like, I was able to like do the dance and follow it along in her head. Like in her narration. I was able to.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I can tell that Roshani had danced. I'm a bet my beans on it. Like she or a close woman in her family does Bharatanatyam, and she asked them about this shit.
Well,
yeah, if you can't tell, Layla's absolutely my favorite.
Yeah, I love Layla. I do. I don't know. I identify with the mom friend thing, and so I was going to go back to Severn, but since we're talking about the dancing and everything, we might as well dig right into the depths of it, which I guess, Nick, you haven't had much to say on this yet because you didn't read the thing that I read and also don't know the dancing like Nami does. But so the maid, how do you feel about she's like a maid person with an expiration date?
I don't know. It's interesting. I'm still like, that's a part that I'm still kind of letting to settle in me because I just finished reading the sections. My schedule's been crazy, so it's kind of just like still like, this is interesting. I want to know more about that.
Yeah, I mean it's very, the description of it so far is pretty vague.
Yeah.
We know that her parents had a stillbirth and they went to this, I don't know what the best English term for him would be, and I could not pronounce, to be honest, the words that they use for him, but they go to this man who creates a person for them. And there's definitely it's very vague as to whether there were like dark arts involved. I know that her mother never felt that way about her, but her father, whether he did from the beginning or whether he just got jaded about it as time went on is unclear. And I obviously there's a lot of the, she's got this big seam scar up her back and she's very self-conscious about that. And there's a lot of hiding behind masks and being, l'enigme, the enigma, basically the mystery.
That's how you say that. Why does French sound like you're?
It might be more like l'enigme. I'd have to look at the word again. It's been a long time since I had to actually speak French, so it might be l'enigme. It depends on where the accents are, but it's somewhere. It's l'enigme or l'enigme. I'm stumbling
Is
over.
French okay? I feel like French as a language is like swallowing half of its syllables.
It is not as bad as German. Because I know that as well.
Yeah.
So
no, that whole realm of European languages can bite me. I will not be trying again.
But so she wears these masks and costumes, and she is only herself around our little group of, do we call them wolves? Like, this book is the Gilded Wolves and it's the Gilded Wolves trilogy, but the wolves thing doesn't come in the first 2/3 of the book. So I'm so like, calling it a group or a crew or a team is like, this is lame. Where's the good, like,
the friends, because they're all friends except for Hypnos, who's the let me in meme on the side.
Yeah.
Let me in.
Please.
He wants to be friends.
But
oh, gosh.
I mean, I love Layla a lot. I love that she's very much an artist, like from beginning to end, right? The dancing, she might not make her costumes, but she certainly
like designs
them. Yeah, she has
I had like a little historical fangirl moment when they say that her couturier is the House of Worth, and they say that her gown is the Ironworks gown because that's a real gown. I mean, obviously, it does not then transform at touch to be floral, but the actual like ironwork gown by Worth. Wait, hold up, let me just pull it up because I'm planning on remaking this gown because for a Layla cosplay. I mean, what?
What?
Yeah,
But
me, no way.
Nami never.
I love how she like lets her stress out by baking. Because I do.
Gown.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Amazing.
I do definitely identify with that. I identify with mom friend and like cooking / baking for sure.
Yeah, I identified with mom friend and also the friend who does artistic thing but refuses to do it as a job because then she's going to get mad at it. That was such a move. She's like part of the moment where she's like part of like this is fun because it's a hobby. If I was the official chef, I would fucking hate this. And I'm like, yeah, that's a move. Also,
but she's also, despite not being able to read, because that's the other thing. She can read things, not people and not forged objects, but she can read items like regular items.
Yeah.
But she's still very good at reading people, like in the non-literal sense.
Except for Severin. She can't read that Severin's horny for her. She could read everyone else.
Listen, I'm the whole Severin and Layla thing. I'm kind of like, it's YA, right? Like something had to exist. And to be honest, at first I thought it was like her and Tristan because of the whole thing at the beginning where he like put Goliath, his giant tarantula in her room, and she was like mad at him about it, and she like went and made him apologize and was being all kind of like, it seemed to me flirty, and then I realized after the fact it was more like she was treating him like a younger brother, right? A very, very much younger brother, like a child younger brother, where she is like older teenager. But at first I thought it was that, and then they brought in the Severin and Layla thing, and I was like, oh, okay, so that's what we're doing here. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to talk about that too much because it's like, it's a YA trilogy.
It's YA. It has romance. I just, on the
that
same.
Is the least interesting romance so far. Let me tell you.
I mean, in the realm of like Inej and Kaz, this is like the romance that I would have wanted as a kid, where like, the very brown girl is the romantic interest, and it's like, fuck yeah. And like the love interest always finds her like super attractive and like doesn't give a shit about anything else. And so I'm like very here for it for that, but also I read romantic fan fiction about anything and everything constantly. So like I do love me a cheesy YA romance. It's just who I am as a person.
I mean, to be fair, everybody finds Layla extremely attractive. So
she's the, oh my god, she's not the mom friend, she's the MILF friend. Can you say that about someone who's she's 18? You're allowed.
Well, no. I just mean she's not technically a mother, right? Like,
yeah, but if she's a mom friend, then she can be a MILF friend.
This is true. Also, Tristan is, for all intents and purposes,
hot takes.
It's a mafilf.
I'm
mom friend I'd like to fuck.
I'm putting this on Twitter. That's so great. Okay, so any other thoughts about Layla? This is just kind of brief because for right now we don't know these characters super well, right? We get very quick introductions to all of them. But any thoughts about any other thoughts about Layla before we move on to we'll go to Severin, I guess.
I love her. Didn't you know?
I always love a mom friend.
I love her, and now she's Indian, so it's just me. Hello.
Yay!
Sorry, guys.
That's great.
Let me just rip open my back seam. I'm gonna come hang out. Also, I watched Multiverse of Madness over the weekend, so reading like this with like the back seam, all I could imagine was some eldritch horror being like crawling, just like unzipping at the back, and then just eldritch horror. I know that's not what's happening, but I just needed to put that cursed imagery out there so you guys could also suffer with me. Thank you.
Gee, thanks.
You're welcome.
So Severin, I'll be honest, at this point is probably the least interesting of the POV characters.
Yeah, I agree.
He's
Severin was
he's a little angy and a little drama and a little he's a little bit of a lot of things. I don't dislike him, but
Yeah.
like
he
he's
was
the
kind
least
of
interesting.
at this point he's very unremarkable. He is the remarkable thing about him is that he's like a mixed kind of what would technically be a bastard child, except his dad and his mom were actually married, but also I don't know if they were. Did they ever specify that? I don't know. He's kind of like that's the spiciness. The spiciness is literally like the Algerian spice thrown in there, and that's all. And like, don't
Just
get me wrong, I don't dislike him. I love me a good emo Angie boy, but he's also currently just an emo Angie boy. There's nothing really else happening.
I do like that they don't give him a ton. He doesn't have an insane number of POE chapters over any of the other characters, right?
Yeah, I did like that. I also do like how he gets like the zinger line, because like when Hypnos is handing out everybody like their roles for that final heist at House Core, and it's like basically roles that are like the antithesis. It's like the stereotype of what everyone is viewed by the Western world. And where Hypnos gives that, and he's like, "This is a great plan," and like Severin sees that and he gets it, but everybody else is just like, "What the fuck, dude? You stereotyped us. What the fuck?" And like Severin basically does that whole like he gives a little speech where he's like, "Oh, like when you pretend to be what they want to see, they're not going to notice you, and you can do what you want, but we're going to get the power, and then they'll be forced to look at you." And that speech, that was the moment where I was kind of like, all right, Severin, you do get it. Okay, you're not just an angry boy because he's not rich.
But he is rich. He got all of his money when he came of age.
Yes, he did.
So,
he's an angry boy because he doesn't have his rich boy title. What the fuck? Who keeps calling my house? I'm gonna mute it.
Nick, what about you? So your thoughts on Severin, like,
you know, going back to the comparison between this book and Six of Crows, like obviously it's not the same thing, but I loved Kaz. And Severin just isn't at that same level, but fills that same role.
mm-hmm.
And so, like, I want more depth and dimension to Severin because I want to like him. I think the whole like being disinherited thing and potentially having an opportunity to get that back is an interesting piece, but it needs more than that for him to really be a compelling character to me.
Yeah, well, I think that some of that is also, you know, Kaz is a self-made person.
Yeah.
He had to be. Whereas Severin, don't get me wrong, he went through some shit with all his shitty foster homes, but he also, as soon as he came of age, he got, you know, oh sure, he had his inheritance in terms of being the head of House Vanth taken away from him,
right?
But he still got a fuck ton of money. Like they couldn't keep that from him, right?
Right.
So, and I'm not saying that he's not doing some good things with it. And I do think there is maybe a little more depth to him than, you know, you see at first glance, just because I think that with having all those terrible experiences that he had, and he did have Tristan along the way, so he has this like need to protect little Tristan, you know, Tristan who can't protect himself. But then he has gathered these people around him and he cares for them, and he is so scared that they're going to leave him when, you know, everything is finalized and they all get their money and everything, and he is desperate kind of to keep, like, he knows Tristan will stay, but the rest of them, like, he's a little bit desperate to keep them around. Layla, obviously, especially because gotta have that YA love story or whatever. But
I hate that.
the others too. Like he thinks about Sophia, he thinks about Enrique, and he knows that when he comes into, if he gets back into the head of the house, position, that he can give them everything they need or they could need or want to go on their way. And he wants to do that, but then he's also so afraid of them leaving him when it does happen. And he's like constantly trying to convince himself that, but maybe they won't leave me. Right.
Because it's so funny because like, in a way, he's like the character who should be the most sure of himself in that group, but he's like built up this narrative of self-doubt in his head where he thinks that he's only a resource for everybody else, and he kind of like glosses over a lot of their friendship because he's like, oh, they can't possibly like value me the same way that I value them because like, like I'm a resource, and like all of that like makes him a lot more interesting, I think, because like that, the fact that like he's literally like the rich white boy of the group, but he's the one who seems to have the most social anxiety and insecurities about like his status in this friend group. Like he obviously knows he's the leader, but I don't think he understands that he's also everybody's friend. Yeah. And I think that's the part that's really lacking. And because of that, like, it's so funny, like, the contrast between his POV and Enrique's, because there's that moment when Enrique's like, and of course, when he's, like, the new head of the house, he's gonna need a historian, and it's gonna be me. Yeah. And then meanwhile, like, poor Severin's sitting there, and he's like, will Enrique stay? I hope he does. I can make his friends like him more by giving him an in. And it's so funny to like see that contrast because it's like, Severin, like, why are you so anxious, sweetie? Like, you're your friends, they love you. But he's like, and I kind of.
But a lot of that definitely comes from for his early rejection. As not being head of this house that he was raised to be head of, and then of course we get the one by one stories, and I don't think we get all of them in the first 3 parts of the book, so I don't want to touch on those right now, but like we do get the one by one stories of all of his foster parents,
7 deadly foster fathers.
Most particular, 7 deadly foster fathers, most particularly like the men of the family. Like some of them have wives and some of them don't, but we'll touch on that for sure when we cover the end of the book, because I don't want to get into stuff when there's definitely a few left that haven't been discussed. But yeah, he's very much somebody who he was rejected and abused at a young age, and despite the fact that he has come into his own, he has money, he has created this place for himself and for his friends, he's given people chances and everything. He doesn't like I think it's like deep down he knows what he's done, but he isn't. He's still unsure of himself, right? So I agree with Nick. It's like, I don't love this character, but I also feel like I'm hoping, my hope is that as the series goes on, we'll learn more about his motivations and just him as a person, and kind of feel a little more regarding him.
Yeah, at this point I'm like intrigued but not hooked. Like I'm like I'm sitting there, I'm ready to drink the Kool-Aid, but I'm like, where's the Kool-Aid?
So we talked, you mentioned Enrique, so let's go to Enrique next, because like, happy little bye boy. Like, I love Enrique.
He's so happy. He's having so much panic.
I said Zofia was my favorite, but I think that, I don't know. I think Enrique might be. I don't know. It's like a hard toss up between the two of them, because I feel like they both I see myself in both of them, right? And like, Enrique doesn't have the forging abilities, but he's really smart and he loves history, and he's used his he's used his like very large brain and his knowledge of historical artifacts and history in general to do some really fucking important things for this little crew. Can we give them a name? Can we please give them a name? That's
Let's
not.
just call them the Wolves for now.
You think we'll call them the Wolves? I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I feel
mean,
like
what else are you gonna call them?
I know, just because that's what the book trilogy is called, but I'm not feeling it. I don't know. I'm gonna call them the cakes.
The cakes.
The cookies. The cookies. They're all cookies.
Cookies.
The cookies.
They are all cookies.
Okay,
like
they're
it.
all cookies. That's what we're going.
They're little cookies.
Yeah. So Enrique might not have any powers, but he's a super integral part of the group, so much so that when they go to the very first little mini heist, quote unquote, that is pulled off, Enrique is the only one that Severin takes. And I think that says a lot.
Mm-hmm. And also to speak to Hypnos initially, like Enrique's the only one Severin takes. Mm-hmm. It seems that when Severin needs to pick like one person and just one person to be with him, it's Enrique. And that's...
I mean, I think some of that is because of his overprotectiveness of Tristan. Mm-hmm. And his knowledge that Zofia probably wouldn't be able to handle social situations with the grace that Enrique always seems to, honestly. And then with Layla, I think it's, again, that, like...
overprotectiveness.
Yeah, but obviously in a different way. So it might be overprotectiveness, and it might also be just, like, jealousy. Like...
Can we just, like, YA authors, can we please just, like, have one book where we don't have to have the, like, male and female leads be in some kind of romantic relationship? Just, like, once.
Well, I think there's non-romance YA.
I would suggest, have you watched Heartstopper yet?
I haven't yet, and it's like super high on my list because everybody is like, this is amazing.
So it is, I mean, it's not obviously like fantasy, sci-fi, whatever, YA in that respect, but it is, at the very least, it is not male and female, like straight male, straight female.
That's good. And I think, to that point, I think that my gripe is that it seems like in every fantasy YA novel, and I'm sure there are exceptions, but it feels like in every YA fantasy novel there has to be a pairing.
Well, okay, so I have a bit of a theory about this, and here it is. I'm gonna spit some facts and also some opinions that I'm going to present as facts because I'm going to say them with confidence and none of them are offensive.
I love it. Let's do this.
Presenting them as fact.
I love it.
Like, YA basically started as like a way for like female-oriented stories to be able to be told, especially female-oriented stories for young girls in a fantasy and sci-fi space where we were told that we were not allowed to be the main characters. And an integral part of the female experience is also being told that you only have value in a romantic relationship, and thus being a young woman constantly seeking a romantic relationship and feeling like that is a requirement for you. So because of that, I think all of those have come to be the YA trope of main character girl always ends up with main character boy, because that is what girls reading those books were taught to want. That is what the people who grew up to write these books continue to write and to think that people want. And while obviously now you do have, queer YA books, because that also needs to happen, that romance aspect is still integral, because unfortunately our society has, I'm still chasing a fly. Unfortunately, our society has still not veered away from that. As a young, like, teenage person, your focus should be your studies and your future, and fuck!
Who has a house phone still?
Turn it off. We do. I live in a whole nice house. But so, because of that, because, the focus for young people has always been you grow up, you get your job, you get married, you have kids, so like that idea that you need to find a relationship to be a full person, since that is so intrinsic, that also happens so much in YA stories. And I think because YA is specifically, targeted at that younger group, romance is an easy way to get the kids invested,
I think, one, you just make a lot of really great points.
Mhm.
And two, like, it is, I do have to also remind myself that when you're at that stage in your life, romance is romance is often an important part of our experiences, right? If you are allosexual and or alloromantic, but at that stage in your life, like your hormones are going, all that stuff. So it does make a lot of sense that like romance is going to be a central theme. And I think you make some excellent points about how, particularly because YA is an area where non-men, I'll say, have had an opportunity to write stories for themselves and to share viewpoints other than the sort of more stereotypical cis male perspective. It does give us that opportunity to see things that aren't always portrayed. And so, completely agree on all those points. I would love to see less YA novels where frankly a cis male is still centered in the story and or the romance. But I agree with your points, and I think it's a very important aspect to what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm. I also do gotta say, read more YA, because honestly, like, that stuff absolutely does exist, and there is more of it now. I like recently read a YA book called Hot Dog Girl, where spoilers for Hot Dog Girl, by the way, but it's about a bisexual disaster girl and her lesbian best friend, and she works at a water park where she has to dress as the amusement park hot dog mascot, and she has a huge big gay crush on a boy. And so the whole book is her trying to like get this friend to like help her like dupe this boy into liking her through some like crazy scheme, and by the end she realizes that she's in love with her friend. And it's really really cute, and it's really really YA, and it's one of those things that, like, there are other things in the genre that does exist, and that's awesome. And I think, the good thing is that, like, YA is a really, really great place for these authors to like decentralize stories about white men. And even though you do have a lot of white men love interests, there are other books where, like, that's not the case anymore, which is also exciting. And I love that. I love that for YA. And the other thing is that, in sort of like the realms of like things that are like kind of looked down on literarily speaking, is like, fantasy with like and obviously this is like a very like classic old-timey definition, but like, classically speaking, like the female fantasy hero is kind of like, bleh, we don't like that. Classically speaking, romance novels, bleh, we don't like that. So for YA to go fuck you, we'll do both, is just like power move. Yep. And
Absolutely.
heck yeah, read more YA. That's all I gotta
Also,
say, honestly.
One, I'm absolutely adding Hot Dog Girl to my list because that sounds amazing. Also, I'm going to do a quick plug for my friend Jadzia's book. It just came out. Her graphic novel, Galaxy: The Prettiest Star.
Oh, it's a graphic novel.
It's a graphic novel. Okay. It's about it's a DC superhero book, but it is about a trans superhero. And like super quick, I'm gonna read the back of it just because I love it. It takes strength to live as your true self, and one alien princess disguised as a human boy is about to test her power. And
I love it already.
I'm super excited about it. Yeah, I want to find just quick sorry.
Well, I mean, I saw you post about it earlier,
and I was art.
Like,
it's so cool.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, because you were like, anybody with, trans kids or whatever, and I'm immediately thinking, what age range is it for? This is totally off topic from our Gilded Wolves discussion.
Yeah, sorry everyone who's listening for our Gilded Wolves take. I would say very young. Like,
oh, okay.
I'm not sure exactly how young I would say, but like if easily middle school,
I think he could still
potentially
enjoy
younger
it, though.
than that.
Because kiddo won't read, but graphic novels, I can get him to read graphic novels.
Yeah.
So there's that. Anyway, so what is the name of it again? I mean, you're already
the prettiest star.
Galaxy, the prettiest star. Okay, like you're already plugging it. Let's plug it.
Yeah, exactly.
Plug all the good things. Okay, so gosh, we've going back to Enrique just briefly. I mean, again, happy, smart bi boy who very clearly has attractions to both Hypnos and Zofia, just saying, which is just like, I love that. Like, listen, if you're going to give me a love triangle in a YA novel, like I could care less about Severin and Layla. Like, what I want is what's going to happen with Enrique and Zofia and Hypnos.
See, my interest with Severin and Layla was like, I'm ready for the juicy drama and misunderstandings that these two idiots are going to do, and then they're going to end up happily ever after, because if they don't, that would be an affront to YA. Mm-hmm. But for Enrique, Severin, and Zofia, I can't wait to see what this dumpster fire does. And I'm sitting here like hoping for like the happy poly triad, but also like since we're centering on like two bi boys just like having a good time and like very confused Zofia being like, why?
I really don't think Zofia could put up with Hypnos like that. Like, she very clearly enjoyed, like, she's like, yeah, we're friends, dude. Like,
we're so cute. She
but also is like, I don't see Zofia putting up with like happy poly triad, but at the same time, I am here for a YA love triangle.
Well, actually,
that isn't.
We could get happy poly hinge though, where Zofia isn't connected to Hypnos, but she is connected to Enrique, and Enrique is with both
of them.
And I feel like that could be like, based on what we've read so far, I feel like that could be really positive.
I love that. I love that for Enrique. I also love the idea of Zofia and Hypnos just like scheming together to make Enrique happy.
Yes.
And just like being BFFs around it. Like, I love it. I love all of this.
Enrique is my favorite so far.
I know. I said Zofia was, but honestly, it's Enrique. I think it's the historian thing.
If it wasn't for the fact that like Layla just hit all of my like not being seen feels, Enrique would hit it right next to there, because Enrique basically does for like the whole Victorian Paris is beautiful setting what I always want to do, which is rip it apart. It's just a bunch of colonists. And Enrique being this like little ball of rage about how everything is stolen. Everything's fucking stolen. Give it back. It's fucking stolen. I want my Filipino friends to like me, but I don't look Filipino enough. But I want them to like me. And I love that so much. And like, obviously, like growing up, like being born and raised in the United States does not give me like the same experience as like being mixed does. But Enrique's conflict of being of the colonists and also of the colonized is like very much the dichotomy of like living effectively within the colonized world and assimilating to it and like effectively approving it implicitly by participating in it. And then not being that. And just, God, I love Enrique a lot. He's doing his best. He's having so much bi panic. I love that for him. I mean, I don't love the panic.
Love a bi panic.
I don't love that he's panicking, but I do love the moment where he's just like, oh shit, Zofia's lips are red. What the fuck? Why am I noticing this?
Okay, so let's move on real quick, because I want to touch on Tristan and Hypnos, who aren't POV characters, but I want to touch on them real quick because they are kind of main characters. So Tristan, the only vibe I get from him is like introverted plant and animal lover, right? Like
Introverted odd spider friend.
Yeah,
he's like your weird friend who's into bugs. They bring bugs inside, and you're like, "Put them outside, please." And he's like, "But they're so cute." And you're like, "Actually, no, they're kind of slimy, bud. Like, why are you doing that?"
It reminds me of the time my ex, we had to kill a black widow spider.
Reasonable.
That we found in our garage, and he insisted on giving it a Viking funeral in the creek in our yard.
Is this Steve?
Yes.
Of course it's Steve.
Like, still good friends with the dude, love him to death. But I just remember standing there and being like, yes, I will participate in this with you. But you realize that we had to kill a very murderous spider that was living in our garage.
Like, if it makes Steve feel any better, you should let him know that in my making of my Zoya Kefta video, I had to cut out some footage of me just laying on the floor and like talking to a spider in my basement and like playing with it and stuff, and I had to cut it out because I was like, people are probably afraid of spiders and this is gonna be upsetting.
But yes, speaking of afraid of spiders, everybody in the crew except for Sophia. I'm sorry, the cookies. All the cookies except for Sophia are a little bit anti. What is his name? What's the spider?
Anti-Goliath.
Goliath. Yeah. Sophia's kind of just like, whatever. It's a thing. Like, she doesn't have any affinity for Goliath, but she also isn't scared of him.
Sophia's vibes are very chill. She's like a solid, serene purple. Meanwhile, Lila's just like, no, you can't pay me. Enrique is like scream and scramble onto couches, and Severin is just disappointed stare into the distance. And Hypnos is like, if I befriend Goliath, will you be my friend?
I just want friends, you guys.
Poor Hypnos. I feel so
Hypnos is like, we'll hold spider for friendship.
So, I mean, we don't really get much about Tristan because, again, no POV, but
the most insight we really have to him, I think, was like Pet Spider. Like, he's off when they go to the garden and start to do the garden stuff. He's like capitalized violently against this heist for unknown reasons, or no, because he has a bad feeling. End quote. And there's also the one of the parents that we do get in this section is Wrath, who is Tristan's biological dad, and he's the one who tortures them with like the weird like mind control Phobos helmet that comes up in the end again. And like there's that whole thing that like evil French man who like kidnaps Tristan at the end is like, yeah, I broke his mind. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? And he was like, yeah, his mind was already fragile. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? And I was just like, this got dark real fast. Is Tristan okay?
No, he's not.
Tristan is not
okay.
I feel really bad for him. He was not okay for basically like
the whole ass time.
He was okay the first, like, before Severin made the deal with Hypnos and they started making the plans. He was okay.
He was okay and for a little bit. And then he stopped sleeping. And then he wore a torture hat again, unwillingly. That's a bad hat.
So I feel like we're gonna have more to say about Tristan after we finish this book. So we'll talk more about him in a couple weeks. But before we move on to other things, one last character, Hypnos. AKA again, I want to be part of the cookies so bad. Let me in. He just wants to be a cookie. He wants to be.
I love that he gets introduced as kind of like
a dick.
Yeah, like he tricks Severin into doing all this stuff, but then all he really wants is friends.
It's so funny because like he shows up and you're like, wow, mastermind manipulator, and then you experience him for 2 seconds and you're like, oh no, he's just a large golden retriever who wants friends.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go with golden retriever. I would go with like some breed of dog that, you know what, a border collie. Border collie is a good example.
That is
once like Sokka, my dog Sokka, perfect example. He wants to be friends with everybody, but he's super bad about going about it, right? Like he's really obnoxious and doesn't do things right. And
Don't worry, Sokka, I'll be your friend.
Like that's how I picture him. He is a border collie who, and he likes his stuff, he likes his things, he likes his items, and I know a lot of that is, and we get we get bits and pieces of this, but what's intriguing about him, the reason why he is in this mindset, right, is because he was him and Severin kind of had to be tested around the same time, but Hypnos I think was first, and they tested him and he was the heir of House Nyx, and then they were like, ah shit, well we can't have two mixed race house heads. That's literally what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the thing that squicks me out about it the most is that that if it had happened closer together, if they had done it at the same time, it would have been Hypnos that they rejected because he looks less like a white person. And it's just like, but they also, he says they track everything I do. It seems to me, and I mean, Nami, correct me if I'm wrong, or Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, it seems to me that the way they are keeping track of him is not, they don't do this to the other house heads, right? They never have. They're just on his ass because he doesn't look the way they want or need or expect him to look, which is just
Yep.
That's the perception we have.
So he's alone. He's alone in the world.
Yeah. An argument could be made that it's because he's young, but we know the truth.
Yeah.
It's because he's black. Thanks, I hate it. But like, I think the like not quite confrontation, but like that moment that he has with Severin where he's like, you were right. There could have only been one. I'm sorry I didn't believe you kind of thing was like, and like just that moment where like I was saying, like when Severin like says that line about like matching what their expectations are so you can actually get the power, and then once you have the power they're forced to see you for who you actually are. Like just that seems like such a good like thing of Hypnos, that like right now he has the power, so he's going about being as unapologetically flamboyant as he can be about his position, and like just being excessively reveling in that wealth because he's like, look at me, you can't stop me, bitch.
Yeah, you can watch me and you can keep an eye on me, but you can't stop me.
But oh my god, but he's so lonely. Poor lad. He's so lonely. He just wants friends. Like I swear, there's that moment in the book where you're reading this and you're like, Hypnos is an asshole and he's manipulative and oh no. And then you see him interact with them and his kicked puppy look, just like every time they're like, we don't like you. And it's just,
but that's the thing. It's only Severin and Tristan who are like anti him, like continuously, right?
Yeah.
The rest of them are not.
Kind of reluctantly so. Severin's, maybe this was me reading into it a lot, but Severin's more seemed like a nope, can't get close, he's gonna hurt me again type thing.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything, anti-Hypnos as a person. It's more just like, no, you're not. Well, I think it's like you're not part of my trusted crew. Like you're like, we're all chocolate chip cookies and you're oatmeal raisin, dude.
Sorry, Hypnos, you're still oatmeal raisin.
You're gonna trick us. You're gonna trick us. We're gonna think that those are chocolate chips, but they're actually raisins, you asshole.
I don't want a healthy cookie.
Healthy.
Oh man, Hypnos just wants friends. I just give Hypnos his friendships.
That poor oatmeal raisin cookie just wants to be part of the chocolate chip bunch.
Oh.
Well, it's not even the chocolate chip bunch. Like Sophia's solidly a sugar cookie. She's not budget on that.
Oh yeah, that's what she likes, right? But I'm talking about just let's talk about cookies in terms of who likes what. Like who actually wants an oatmeal raisin cookie except for my old ass husband.
I actually do like oatmeal raisin cookies.
I like them,
Yeah,
but I
but are
don't like
chocolate
them
chip
if I
better?
think. Well,
Well, yeah, of
see,
course chocolate chip is
Exactly.
better, but like sometimes you're like, oh, I want like a cookie that's sweet but also has some savory notes to it.
yeah, no. I do like oatmeal raisin cookies, but if I am intending to eat a chocolate chip cookie and I pick up oatmeal raisin, I'm pissed. If I'm
Oh
intending to
yeah.
eat oatmeal raisin and I pick up a chocolate chip cookie, I'm like, oh well,
Yeah.
calories.
At least it's chocolate chip.
Exactly.
Oh gosh. Okay. So a few things I want to, we've gone long discussing the characters, which first part of the book, whatever. But
hmm
I do want to touch on a couple other things before we close out. First of all, I am trying so hard not to have temporary flashbacks in regards to the mentions of Napoleon. God, kill me. And colonialism, because we dealt with colonialism a lot in the Temeraire series, but thankfully this is a very different perspective. Like it's more of a first person's perspective, particularly with Enrique's hot takes, but also, with the exposition that they go to, which is based on a real thing that actually happened, where they had like Negro villages and stuff. Like, and I'm saying this historically, this is not a term I would, it was, it was gross. Like it was a zoo. It was a zoo.
Yeah, I think for me, the reason this kind of vibes very different from Temeraire is because while Temeraire does give you the narration of colonialism is bad, it starts off with the narration of everything the West does is good. And this book never starts with that.
Right.
This book straight up starts with the West only has a Babel fragment because they stole it from one of the other places and thus destroyed a civilization in the process of taking this. Like that's like the opening like arc of this book. Although when you read that opening, you don't quite get that that's what would have happened. But like, there's that like opening sequence where it's like, and then the West has a Babel fragment because it was recovered and brought over here, and it's like presented as a history book, like a big like great thing. But the moment you get into the actual text, immediately it's like, ah, yes. Order of Babel steals artifacts. Order of Babel steals artifacts. Order of Babel and the houses steal artifacts. And removing a Babel fragment from a place removes their magic and it basically crumbles their civilization. And also we stole that for ourselves. And it's like, so like the framework of this series was an entirely different vibe because while both
for sure.
So like while I always got annoyed at Temeraire because it started off with the like veneer of yes, we are British and we love our colonies. This book doesn't even bother. It's like yep, hello, we're in Paris, fuck Paris, all right, let's continue, thank you.
Well, Nick, I don't think you read as many of the Temeraire books as we did.
No, I did not.
So you got lucky there. And
like as soon as I was like, oh, I can't join with these anymore, and I'd already read a few of the books, and I was like, I'm getting bored. I was like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore.
Proud of you for doping out, honestly. I don't know why I kept reading them.
Dude, I was like, I'm doing it for a webcast, so I'm a completionist. But anyway, so I just wanted to touch on the whole like, oh God, well, and they kept bringing up Napoleon too, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's 1889, y'all. Napoleon is how many decades dead?
Wait, did they bring up Napoleon? I don't even remember.
Yeah, they like quite a few times, like when they were talking about the French Revolution, and the bumblebee or the honeybee, whatever it was, the bee, the little bee pins that they're wearing. They're like, but that was like a symbol that Napoleon used. He used the bee, as like one of his symbols. And yeah, it was quite a few times. And I was like, oh my God, please don't let us get back into Napoleon.
I'm going to be honest. I did not even register it. I
think I still, I have a little bit, and I hate to use this term lightly, but I have a little bit of PTSD from the Temeraire novel.
It's okay, because I was about to ask you if you had Temeraire related PTSD.
Like
because
a little bit.
Honestly, I think the only reason
I liked about 3 of those books.
Yeah, like some of them were perfectly fine. And honestly, I'm gonna be real honest. If this was me 15 years ago, I would have really enjoyed them all because I would never have gotten the books like Gilded Wolves that would have actually put me on the main screen, and I would have been okay with Mr. Lawrence being Whitey McWhitey pants and Whitey McBoring pants in the middle of it, all that shit. But like I think for me, since this is a Gilded Wolves reread for me, I read these books way before Temeraire, so like that association was never even there for me. So like I'm not like reading these for the first time after reading Temeraire. I'm rereading them from the point of view that these are some of my favorite books now. So like to me, like they're not even on the same like dimension. Like they do not even exist in the same multiverse. Like they're so far apart that the same watcher cannot even access them all because they're in different multiverses.
Okay, so moving on from any mentions of Temeraire and Napoleon, real quick, I want to touch on this like secret shadow cloaked Order of Babel and the Babel fragments and the forging. And what do we think so far, or how do we feel so far about the magic system?
So this is the one thing I find lacking in these books. I do find the lack of a more concrete magic system frustrating as somebody who raved during Grishaverse about all the like little details we ended up getting later that I really enjoyed. I love a detailed magic system. And I like that the base for this system, despite being all the biblical stuff, I like that there's like one throwaway line that I noticed this time that was talking about like how in order to be an effective forger, you need to understand like the molecular and chemical like makeup of the material that you're trying to forge. So forging is a lot more study based versus innate talent, which is why someone like Sophia is so good at forging because she's so good at studying and like hyper focusing on stuff like that. And like so like that's really like the only concrete thing that you get about forging, and frankly it reads very much as just a pretty much most magic is possible, but some things aren't, so go with it, YOLO. And frankly, if I didn't love everything else about these books so much, that would have been a big turnoff for me. But I do love everything else about these books so much. Cough the characters, cough Layla, Enrique, Sophia, Hypnos, cough. Also Goliath, who am I kidding? I do love that little spider dude. Listen, that's the one difference between me and Layla. I would let Goliath stay in my room.
There was a period of time where my ex and I legit we spent way too much. I don't know how. Don't ask me how we got on this because I could not tell you how. But there was like a week or two years and years ago where we somehow got on the thing of watching tarantula videos on YouTube. And people who own tarantulas are like obsessed with their tarantulas. Oh, yeah. Like they say this thing like he's a little bit hair flicky. That's actually a term that they use. He's hair flicky. Like they flick hairs off their legs or something. But like, so I'm reading this and all I'm thinking is like,
Tristan as a TikTok tarantula influencer.
Is he like is Goliath a little bit hair flicky or a lot hair flicky? We'll never know, I guess.
Oh my god. But yeah, no, yeah.
Go watch some YouTube videos about tarantulas, let me tell you.
I can't believe I'm gonna be doing this now. But yeah, no, I'll admit the magic system, I get frustrated that there aren't a lot of details, but also since so much of the magic system is built into like the mythology of things, I like how it sort of also lets you just kind of go on an archaeologic free-for-all of being like, most ancient shit is forged, go forth and be wild, kids. Summon a demon from a book, let's fucking go. Turn it off with a feather, let's fucking go. I found myself enjoying the fact that I could not figure out what the magic system would throw us with. But at the same time, I will always love a magic system with rules more, so that will be a frustrating thing for me. But I've learned to live with it.
So Nick, what about you? How did you feel about the forging? And I don't know, like how it was presented, anything like that.
I think, yeah, basically, I prefer a system where we have an understanding of what's going on and what its capabilities are and things like that. And I can appreciate a system where you allude to things and you can't fully know what's happening or understand why, but you can kind of get a feel for it. I feel like this doesn't really hit on either of those for me. It doesn't give me the crunchiness of a system where like I know how it's supposed to work and we can have those fun details, but also though it doesn't give us enough of like the, if you're going to go in the other direction, like I want to have more of a mystery about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of like I'm still not sure how I feel, and I think like it's definitely something I want to touch on as we hopefully learn more about it. Right now, I'm kind of like, how the fuck are they doing all that? Like they literally, it seems like they literally can do anything. And I think that again, it was in the summary, like as a brief like line, like we're meeting all these prodigies, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all prodigies, the people who we've met so far who can forge. So I think that there is a lot of, it seems like they can do anything, but maybe it's just because these people are really super good at it. So I'm definitely interested to see what happens in the future when we hopefully learn more about the magic system. Okay. So last but not least, just because, and I know there are going to be people here who haven't read the books of Babel, right? Who are listening to this as a podcast or watching it, whatever. But if you haven't read the books of Babel, read the books of Babel. And this season, our season 3, is called The Lure of Babel because both of these series, you know, have that prominently. It's very different in Gilded Wolves so far, obviously, because the references to the Tower of Babel are more like literal. They're talking about the biblical Tower of Babel in these books versus the mess of a tower that we read about in the books of Babel. But there are still some like little books of Babel reminders. The how do you pronounce it? I mean, memo bugs is what I would say, but
I think the audiobook kept pronouncing it as Nemo bugs.
Nemo
right?
bugs. Okay, I was wondering if it was Memo or Nemo because it's hard to. It's like MNEMO. Nemo bugs are a lot like the sphinxes, moths, or butterflies in the books of Babel. Basically, they can record things and they can also help you view things, I think.
Yeah, like tiny little recording dudes.
Yeah.
Literally the Sphinx is moths.
Well, and also the police for the Order of Babel, which I guess are they forged? I was a little bit unclear on that. The Sphinxes that like if you if they feel that basically if you like remove if they feel like a forged object is stolen, they will come after you, right? Is kind of what I was gathering. But they are called the Sphinxes. And I was like, oh, well, Sphinxes. That's
oh yeah. The police.
Yeah. The Order of Babel police. I don't quite have a read on what the deal is with them, but so
we're the cat cops.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that.
Reinforced colonialism.
But yeah, like there are minimal references that are like super similar, but it was still nice to see like these little bugs are like this thing from the books of Babel, and the Sphinx is a thing. Which is also the Sphinxes being prominent is a little bit weird to me, only because it's like these are 2 entirely separate series written in 2 entirely different ways. And is the Sphinx only a thing because they because of like the area that the Tower of Babel was supposedly in, and they're bringing in that, you know, mythology. It's I don't know. It was very interesting to see. Like, I wasn't expecting them to be similar at all, other than, okay, they both literally talk about the Tower of Babel, but
I'm gonna be honest. Like, I did not even clock Sphinx when I was like reading it the first time, and then on my reread, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what they were called. That's funny." Look at that! Me screaming, me holding up my book, shaking it in the air. It's a connection.
Well, on that note, do we have any last thoughts about the first 3 parts of this book before we close out? Because it's a very action. I have finished the book, so it's a very action-packed, like, last section of the book. It's short but action packed, so I don't want to mistakenly spoil anything.
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm excited about.
Bad spoil.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so any last thoughts on the characters, the magic system, anything?
Let Hypnos in. Let him in. He's been standing outside the gate.
Let him be a chocolate chip cookie or a sugar
oatmeal cookies are still cookies.
Let him complete his ascension to sugar cookies so Enrique can have his sugar cookies.
Yeah, let him have his sugar cookie.
Maybe we'll see if Zofia also likes this particular sugar cookie.
boys love sugar cookies.
Excited to. I don't know if that'll happen in the last chunk of the book, but I'm hoping for some romantic.
It's a trilogy.
I'm hoping for some romantic.
I know that. I know there's more books, Nami. I'm just saying.
I'm hoping for some romantic connections that aren't this like back and forth between Severin and Layla.
Yeah.
Like it's honestly it's not the worst YA thing I've ever read. It really isn't, but it's also just like I don't care really that much.
I could read a whole book of Enrique just awkwardly tripping over himself and like noticing things about like Sophia and Hypnos trying to flirt and Enrique being like, no, yes, no.
So in conclusion,
I hate it. I love it.
Yeah.
Shut up.
In conclusion,
you don't know me.
I hate you.
In conclusion, let Hypnos be a sugar cookie or whatever. All right. Sorry. I have to cough. Once again, I'm Tara, along with Nick and Nami. Thank you for joining us for Sagas and Sass, and we'll see you in 2 weeks when we will be discussing the last few parts of the Gilded Wolves. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.